Big valuations always grab the headlines, but there's usually more to the story. To learn more, I'm joined by Michael Molnar of Cetera. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to dive right in here. What are maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest levers that actually move valuation right now?
Yeah. So I'll keep it really simple. There's two. One would be the type of business that you have. If you have advisory business, that's more highly valued than non-advisory. If you have recurring revenue, that's more highly valued than non-recurring. And that really comes down to the type of relationship you have with your clients. Is it sustainable? And are you adding value consistently? So that's number one. The second item is organic growth. So, and by organic growth, to be very clear, net new assets. How many people are writing checks in versus having to write checks out? So not market growth, not revenue, but your net new assets. And the firms that are the highest valued are typically almost all advisory and are growing organically on net new assets. Those are the two key things. If you only focused on two things, those are the two things to focus on.
Well, I think that's a great point because the reality is that deal headlines can actually be quite misleading. So when an advisor hears a big multiple, what questions should they ask to understand what the deal is actually worth?
Yeah, so this is, it's a great question. There's two things you should ask. First is, what is the headline, right? What does that include? Does that include a base valuation? Are you assuming that there's an earnout, I earn the whole thing? Sometimes people put your compensation in it to make it large. So what is it? And then the second thing is, what are the conditions? What do I have to do to get it? So what is it, the headline? And then what are the conditions I have to do to get it? So that could be, I might have to grow a certain level. I might have to retain clients. If you give me equity, how does that work exactly, right? And so those are, the headline versus the conditions of what you have to do is really important. And I like to joke a little bit about, Elon Musk. He has apparently $1 trillion pay package. A lot of people would like $1 trillion. It's probably more than a lot of us would make. That's the headline. I think he has to do the following. This is the structure. I think he has to colonize Mars with like 1 million people. True. He has to put data centers in space, and he needs a $7.5 trillion valuation. His base salary is $54,000 in this package. So it's a crazy example, but it's a good example of it's $1 trillion, but he has to do that to achieve it. And so it's the same thing with any company, whether it's RIAs or wealth managers. There's a headline and there's what you need to do to achieve it. You have to really know what you need to do to achieve it.
I love that you're pointing out. It really comes down to the conditions, like you said. So I'm sure you see this a lot, but what are maybe some of the most common mistakes that buyers and sellers make, and what separates the deals that actually work long term?
Yeah, so the biggest one, I'll be a little bit of a broken record. The biggest one is people will focus on the headline and not on the structure. And I'll keep going back to that because it's really, really, really important. There's a saying, something along the lines in M&A, like, give me the value, show me the valuation and I'll give you the structure. So that's the biggest one. And then, long term, the biggest thing that people need to sort of think through is this a group that I really want to work with, right? And as simple as that is there a cultural fit? And that word culture can be amorphous, but it's like, would I enjoy working with them? Would they enjoy working with me? Sometimes people get really enticed and it makes sense by the headline, but you got to understand short term what you got to do to achieve it. And then long term, do you think you'd want to work together for a long time?
So what's a deal then that you would potentially walk away from, even if the headline valuation looks amazing?
Yeah. So we see so many deals. We've done an incredible amount of deals at Cetera. We see a lot externally. We see a lot internally. So we've had a lot of reps. The first thing I would always say to people, and I advise a lot of our independents when they're doing deals together, trust is really important. And these are basic things, but when money starts exchanging hands or gets floated, you can sometimes forget common sense. Trust is really important. You have to trust that what someone is saying will happen with the deal. And you have to trust that they're going to deliver and you're going to deliver. So that's one. At Cetera, what we do is we buy external groups in terms of acquisitions, but we also have our 1099 independents. That's a big part, the majority of our business. We're also buying those groups into our W-2 community. And one of the reasons that's worked really well is there's a level of trust with the organization. Even if we're buying a group and they don't know me or they don't know some of the people in that segment, they know people at Cetera, so there's a level of trust. So that's one item that's really important in terms of the level of trust that's built. And then the second is, unless you can clearly say, this is what I need to do to get that value, I would walk away. But the person offering you that should be explaining it really clearly, and you should be able to go right to the contract and see it.
And obviously in the M&A space, it is truly all about the numbers. That's what it ultimately boils down to. And people often talk numbers on the deals, but there's a lot of tangibles, intangibles when it comes to M&A. So what are the biggest non-number issues people face?
There's so many examples here. These are, it might be one or two principals. This is their life's work. And this is all they've done. Their whole identity is wrapped up into it. So to sell that, even if they know they want to retire, can be really emotional. To sell that and feel like you're losing control can be really emotional. And so I'll give you an example. Sometimes this comes up as another issue that's brought up. So I'll give you an example. I was talking to an individual, great individual, and he said, he kept bringing up valuation, all these other things over months and months and months. And I finally said to him, I said, hey, listen, I hope we have enough of a relationship now where I can say this and not offend you. But these issues, they don't seem like the issues because we've already gone through them. It feels like maybe you're not ready to sell. And he actually said, Mike, you're right. And it was really, really interesting. I said, that's totally fine. This is really emotional. So sometimes the issues that are brought up over here, the root cause is really the emotions around it. And it's a lot more emotional than, let's say, large scale deals.
Hey, that makes absolute sense because that is something that you cannot calculate when it comes down to the human emotion side of things. Well, Michael, I really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for your perspective.
Thank you very much for having me.
For Wealth Management, I'm Shannon Rossick.